Ladies and gentlemen, I want to inform the Director of National Intelligence and her favorite leaker, Chatsworth Catarlson Jr. Let's see here. Just bear with me. The Natanz nuclear facility is leaking nuclear radiation right now. That would seem to be a giveaway, doesn't it, Mr. Producer? I want to invite a dear friend on the program here, Ben Shapiro. Ben, how are you, brother?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great. Now, I'm hearing a lot of mealy mouth from the fringes. I'm hearing a lot of opposition from the fringes saying the U.S. should not get involved in this war that Israel's in. And I'm thinking to myself, does that mean no intelligence? Does that mean they shouldn't help even in a defensive way? Does that mean just close their eyes to everything that's taking place here? I mean, I'm wondering. And then they claim to be Maga. And then they claim that the president has turned his back on Maga. Would you address that, please?
Sure. I mean, I wonder what their definition of MAGA is, considering that the President of the United States has been absolutely 100% consistent on this issue since before he took office the first time. He always said that Barack Obama's Jcpoa was the worst deal ever signed in all of human history. He always said that the Iranians could not have nuclear weapons. He's been a determined foe of the Iranian revolutionary regime since the moment he took office, restoring the maximum pressure campaign, ditching the Jcpoa, killing Qasem Soleimani, standing shoulder by shoulder with Israel, and also, by the way, by Saudi Arabia, who also is threatened by the Iranians. And yet somehow it is not MAGA for the United States to stand with Israel when Israel moves to take out the Iranian nuclear regime and then to help prevent missiles from falling into civilian populated centers in Israel. By what measure would that be MAGA? That doesn't seem MAGA to me. That sounds like a horseshoe theory, Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky leftism masquerading as right-wing isolationism.
And isn't it very self-righteous of this little cabal to claim that they are MAGA, they represent MAGA? I think if I went out and talked to, say, 10 people of the 77 million and asked them who some of these self-righteous, self-appointed MAGA leaders are, they wouldn't have the foggiest idea who I'm talking about, would they?
I think that's certainly true. And not only that, we actually do have poll results with regard to the conflict between Israel and Iran, showing that a majority of Americans back the Israeli airstrikes on Iran. That's been true for a long time. Republicans, by a wide margin, actually, agree with the Israeli airstrikes on Iran. And so this bizarre notion that Israel is somehow the aggressor, or that the only way to come to a peaceful conclusion here was going to be through a JCPOA 2.0, but worse, or through more concessions brokered by Qatar, which is essentially a stand-in for the Iranian regime. I'm not sure under what sense that could be considered MAGA. And again, the President of the United States built MAGA, right? It's his movement. And the idea that that movement can simply be hijacked by anybody else from the outside, claiming to speak in the name of MAGA, while again, the vast majority of the president's voters are absolutely unified on this issue. I mean, that's true for congressional leaders who are MAGA. It's true for senatorial leaders who are MAGA. It's true for the President of the United States himself. I mean, has the president been unclear? What exactly is the hang-up here? Are people having hearing trouble? The president has been saying this stuff repeatedly and consistently for a full decade. This is one of there are a few positions President Trump has been absolutely consistent on. Closing the southern border would be one, deregulation would be another, and a third would be his hatred for the JCPOA and his belief that the Iranians cannot have a nuclear weapon.
And doesn't this demonstrate how right he is, the fact that Iran is firing all these ballistic missiles at population centers in Israel? And as our friend Representative Brian Mast has been saying all day, just imagine warheads on these missiles, or even some of these missiles. I mean, doesn't this prove that Trump is right, as opposed to they're not MAGA, they're MAGATs, to be perfectly honest with you, but nonetheless, doesn't that prove them all wrong?
I mean, it certainly does. Again, one of the big hangups of the JCPOA, one of the problems was that the JCPOA didn't just free up billions of dollars for Iran to use for whatever it chose. It also allowed them to build up their ballistic missile stockpile, which they are currently activating against Israel. That was one of President Trump's chief criticism of the JCPOA. And the fact that Iran has now launched hundreds of missiles against Israel. They apparently have 2,000 ballistic missiles in store. They also have cruise missiles and drones. That stockpile, combined with an ideology that says Israel should be extirpated. And, by the way, attacks on Saudi Arabia are legitimate. Remember, it was just a couple of years ago the Iranians were attacking Saudi oil fields. And the most destabilizing force in the region by far is Iran. It has been for decades. Iran has never been weaker thanks to Israel essentially taking out all of its terror proxies. But as you say, if Iran had nuclear weapons, what we are watching right now would be 100 times as terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And that's to America. And they say it's not just a slogan, it's a policy. I mean, how blind do you have to be to a terrorist regime that wants to blow out the United States, our ally Israel, the West, especially those of us who have a little bit of a memory about 9/11 and so forth? Don't you think this is perverse?
I mean, it's perverse on the security front. Number one, Iran actually does spread terror all over the world, not just the region. I mean, Iran has its terror tentacles in the United States. It has it in South America. They have it in Europe as well. But I mean, I think one of the things that's worthwhile noting about America's geopolitical situation is that if you think that it doesn't matter to the United States what happens in the Middle East, look at the oil spike that happened today. Now imagine that Iran were nuclear and we're holding up oil supply from the Middle East, threatening Israel, threatening Saudi Arabia. Do you think that would have no impact on how Americans live? You think that Iran, with ICBMs, with the capacity to reach Europe, let alone the United States, wouldn't shape and reshape the global geopolitics of energy resources and trade? I mean, think how much trouble the Houthis have made just by firing some rockets, essentially, at shipping in the Red Sea, increasing prices. The reality is that the world is interconnected. The economy is interconnected. Security is interconnected. And this bizarre notion that you can give the world's worst regime the world's worst weapons, and somehow that will have no impact on the United States, is perversely ignorant.
We're here with our friend Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, President Trump gave the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran 412 opportunities to surrender their nukes, while the reprobates, the false Maga, were saying they didn't have a nuke program, but they wouldn't surrender it. And the Israelis have been itching to take care of business because they're in the neighborhood and they know this regime better than anybody else. Donald Trump is a transformative foreign policy president, isn't he?
100%. President Trump threw out the playbook on the Middle East when he took office the first time, and everybody in the foreign policy establishment and in the sort of horseshoe theory right and left absolutely freaked out. So President Trump said, listen, I can move the American embassy to Jerusalem, and it will not result in a regional conflagration. And everybody said that he was wrong and that it would light a fire in the Middle East, and he was right. They were all wrong. And then he said, listen, I don't need to make the Palestinian issue first and foremost on the agenda when it comes to negotiating an agreement between Israel and its Arab neighbors. And everybody said, that's crazy. John Kerry said, that will never happen. That will never happen. And President Trump did that, and he was right again. And he negotiated the absolutely transformative Abraham Accords with the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco and a bevy of other countries. And President Trump killed Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian terror master. And he was told by people like Tucker Carlson that it was going to lead to a widespread regional war, possibly World War III. And, of course, none of that happened either. He killed the Jcpoa and reestablished maximum containment and maximum deterrence on Iran and essentially destroyed their economy. And that did not result in a stronger Iran. It resulted in a weaker Iran. Then Joe Biden came in, and he undid everything President Trump did, being the worst president in American history. And he led to October 7th by essentially creating daylight between the United States and its allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia, trying to revive the Jcpoa. So Trump comes back in. And guess what? He's the same guy he was the first time. He says all of this foreign policy nonsense that suggests that Iran has to be sort of given a slow path toward a nuclear weapon. Maybe they'll moderate. Maybe we'll do a Jcpoa. He said, no, nonsense. They're going to come to the table, and they're going to give us precisely what we want, or there's hell to pay. And he said, I'm going to give them 60 days to do it. And on day 61, as President Trump said in his Truth Social, on day 61, Israel struck. And he said, listen, that is their right. That is their duty to protect their citizens. America is sovereign. Israel is sovereign. And he said, yeah, I knew about it. He's not making any bones about the fact that he had prior knowledge of what was going on. And the fact is that because President Trump understands the nature of power better than any president of my lifetime, bar none, he understands particularly the way the Middle East works, which is that the strong horse is the winner. Because President Trump understands that there is nothing that substitutes for victory in the Middle East, in business, in any realm of life. President Trump is a success-oriented president. Because of that, he understands what has to be done in the Middle East, and he's paving the way for a brand new Middle East. If the Iranian regime were to either fall or their nuclear program were to be completely destroyed, as Israel seems to be doing right now, and it seems like contemporaneously as we talk, Israel's going after energy assets in Iran as well. Were that to happen, you're talking about a brand new Middle East in which peace will actually bloom in precisely the way that only President Trump said that it would. And everyone laughed at him. And he was right and they were wrong.
And if this does occur, you're right, it'd be complete transformation of that part of the world for the better. We'll get to hear from some of the actual Iranian people about what they think about the regime. A lot of people talk about them as if they're just part of this government, and if they just come to the table, this regime, and then the people of Iran could live in freedom and prosperity. No, they can't. They can't, can they? Not under this regime.
No, I mean, there's nobody that hates the regime more than the Iranian people hate the Iranian regime. This is something that Prime Minister Netanyahu knows very well. In fact, he put out a full statement going after the Iranian regime on behalf of the Iranian people, saying the Persian people should rise up and they should take their historic birthright and they should take back their country, because he understands that the Iranian people do not agree with this terroristic regime that shoots its own people. I mean, there have been millions of protesters in the streets since 2009 when Barack Obama basically let them out there to dry. And they want this regime gone. There's a reason that the internet is down in Iran right now. Israel did not take down the internet in Iran. Iran took down the internet in Iran. They're afraid that people in Iran are going to start blasting out targets for the Israelis to hit. They're afraid that the Iranians are going to use the internet to coordinate, to recognize the fragility of the regime and coordinate and maybe attempt to overthrow the regime. And that's coming from within. Again, 0 people. Mark, it's amazing. All the people who've been attacking you, saying, oh, you're calling for a full-scale ground invasion of Iran. You have never called for that once. I've never called for that once. The Iranian people are perfectly capable of doing this, and they should.
Katarlson came out and posted something. The guy's like a lunatic. He posts things that I don't even say, or people leak to him. They undermine the president and his confidence in them. I know who it is, by the way. And that I advised the president that the United States military should bomb Iran. No, I didn't. I never advised the president the United States military should bomb Iran. So they put this stuff out. I'm not going to get into details, but let me put it to you this way. The president of the United States knows exactly where I stand. And, Ben, millions of people know exactly where I stand. I state it behind the microphone. I state it on TV and so forth and so on. If he wants to know where I stand, he just watches the TV show, which he does, which I'm very appreciative of. But on the other hand, the idea that I said the United States should bomb Iran, well, maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't, depending on what's prudent, depending on what he decides and our military decide. But I never advised him that, so they put this stuff out. Because they don't want to argue the merits, do they? They don't want to argue the substance. They don't. I have said, why don't these isolationists put out their plan for foreign policy? Because they have no plan for foreign policy. Because you're an isolationist. The plan is not to really engage in, oh, we can do diplomacy. I didn't ask that. What is your plan? In other words, there are evil regimes. You can talk to them all you want. What would you do with an evil regime? What would you do with Iran? That won't right. Make a deal. What are you going to do with them?
Right. They never actually explain what they would like to do. They just assume a universe that doesn't exist. And there's something else, Mark, that you're saying here that's really true. The attempt to openly manipulate the president of the United States by these folks is really kind of sick. I mean, you say what you want to say about the president's policies every day. I say what I want to say about the president's policies every day on my show. You want to know what I think about the president's policies? All you have to do is tune in or follow my Twitter feed or whatever. But I'm not attempting to the president of the United States is not manipulable. The president of the United States has his own mind, and he makes up his own mind. He is not going to simply be twisted and turned by leakers in the White House or people to whom they leak. That is not the way this works. And this bizarre attempt to twist and turn and suggest that it must be you or Sean Hannity or various other people who have talked to the president who are somehow cudgeling the president into taking a position. That is not the way. What a really pathetic view of President Trump that is. I mean, is that really what some of these people think of President Trump, that he's that easily manipulated, that he's that easy to twist and turn inside out? I mean, if they really think that, it says more about them than it does about the president or about you.
And it does. It says a lot about them because they show him no respect. And some of these people used to trash him pretty bitterly. You know, Republican primaries are difficult things. They get very down and dirty. The candidates get down and dirty. The supporters get down and dirty. That's fine. And then it's over. It's over. We come together. We try and elect somebody who's better than one of the crazy-ass Democrats. And then they pull that stuff out and they'll say, look what Ben Shapiro said. But then you have those who, even after he's nominated and so forth and so on, it's not a matter of disagreeing with policy. It's a matter of personally attacking him. And we're seeing that right now. That he's turned on Maga. So if you support the United States and Israel, and you support our foreign policy, you support our troops, he's turned on Maga. And so I'm spending a lot of time on this now, Ben, because I think it's time that we clean all this up and clear all this up so we can win future elections and get real policy decisions that make sense, rather than these really bizarre extremist frauds who come up with their own asinine ideas. Last word.
The straw men that are being set up and burned at fever pitch by so many of these isolationists, all in an attempt to try and manipulate the president into believing the things that they believe or saying the things that they want, with leaks and methodologies that would never be tolerated and shouldn't be tolerated by the White House. It really is a massive problem. If people want to have an open and honest discussion about this stuff, that discussion is perfectly available to them. But the amount of lies that are being told about positions and the amount of demonization of people who disagree, but who happen to agree with the President of the United States, is truly astonishing and says something about the character of the people who are launching those attacks.
Well, you're terrific. We very much enjoyed you. You haven't been on this program in a while. I remember when you used to sub for me. Do you remember that? It's a long time ago.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's going back a bit. Yep.
All right, my friend. And tell everybody where they can find you, even though they already know, probably.
Hey, check out my podcast anywhere you get podcasts, The Ben Shapiro Show, and, of course, check out all of our work over at dailywire.com.
There you go. God bless you, my friend. Keep up the great work.
You too. Be well, Mark.
All right. Be well.